He is none other than Scott Van Pelt, the host of ESPN's Masters coverage. How are you, Scott?
I'm at Augusta, Rich, which means all is right with the world. It's a neat place. It's my favorite week of the year, and it's great to be with you always.
Always. So you're in Butler Cabin this year. This is fantastic, Scott.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, on the long list of things that no one saw coming, that's very, very high on the list, man. I'm trying not to. I'm sure you do this yourself with all the cool things that you have done and get to do. When you take a moment and you take inventory and you're just thankful and you just try your best to do the job that they believed you could do, which is why they put you in the chair to begin with. And, look, it's the Masters. No one's there to see me. I'm just thrilled that I have an opportunity to sit where everyone wants to be on Sunday afternoon.
It's incredible. That's awesome, Scott. I'm so excited to hear that. That said, look, you respect the place and
sure,
and you're a true professional. That said, can we pull some sort of Death of a Salesman, Biff Loman type thing, and you steal something from the Butler Cabin for me?
What would you like?
Well, is there some form stationery? Nothing like even a pen to just do the full Death of a Salesman thing. I mean, can you grab something without? Without
in an effort, Rich, to make this not my first and last trip inside the Butler Cabin, I'm gonna go ahead and leave everything right where it is.
Sure. Okay.
I'm going to be the guy that gets invited into the formal living room in someone's home, and you don't take your shoes off. And remember the scene in Sling Blade where he didn't sleep under the covers? He just kind of sat on the bed in the morning, smoothed out the covers just so no one would know that he was there. It is my goal to not do anything incorrect. And I want to make this clear. I'm kidding. The folks at Augusta National, they couldn't be more accommodating, more welcoming hosts. You just simply want to do the job to the level that it's been done. That's all you want to do. And if I can steal you a pen, Rich, I will do that.
Yeah, you cannot be the Carl Childers, the Sling Blade of Augusta National, Scott. You're not. So I can't even ask you to do that.
I reckon this is a par 5, I reckon. Can you imagine?
That would be one and done. That would be one and done right there. Scott Van Pelt here on the Rich Eisen Show. So we had Jim Nantz on Monday. He mentioned the first player out of his mouth was Dustin Johnson. Is that the sense of things, that this could be his year here?
Without a doubt. And it's the sense, Rich, in the same way that it used to be with Tiger, that if he plays to his best capabilities, that he could well win in a walk. He's always been incredibly long, but he's married that now with his short game where his wedges and his ability to putt are much, much better than they once were. And he arrives having won 3 in a row. But there's this odd history here where the number one player in the world hasn't played particularly well here. The last to win as the number one or as the favorite was Tiger, and it's been 15 years ago. So everything points to him, and yet history here points in another direction. So if he does that, it would shock no one. He's absolutely the favorite and should be based on how he's played.
All right, so let's walk through some others that you think have the shot this week that you believe could be slipping on the green jacket in that beautiful Butler Cabin.
I think Jordan Spieth will expect to play here forever, and likely will. I think that John Ram, and it's apparently Ram, not Rahm. We've been saying his name wrong all this time. This young Spaniard who's playing so well could be one of those surprises as a first-timer. I think Justin Rose could win here. He always seems to play well. But it would surprise me if it were some name. There'll be some name, some leader on Thursday that you'll go, wow, who's that? Or not who's that, but I didn't think he'd lead. But there are Thursday stories, there are Friday stories, and then there are weekend stories. And so I think by Sunday late, it's a name that we know well. And it's a name like Ram that we will learn how to say correctly and will know for many years to come.
Now, if there's if I was given a list of players, for instance, and the list of players were a group of, like, say, the first group of expected winners, and then the second group of players would be players who are, concept of second-tier players, Who?
Wow, way to veil this, Rich.
Well, who might you choose from, like, the list of folks like Leishman or Koepka or Reed, or who else is on that second list, Brockman?
I don't know. Do you have it in front of you?
So this is just a theoretical pool that guys could have.
Yeah,
work
just
together, just kind of knocking it around for and giggles, just something like that.
J.B. Holmes, just throwing out names like that.
No skin in the game or anything.
I think I'd take a flyer on a guy like Leishman, a guy who has contended in majors, a guy who won at Bay Hill. I think Leishman, Rich, would be a really good name to write down next if you're drafting or if it's some sort of Calcutta.
What about?
I'd put a little notch next to his name.
What about Thomas Peters? Seen a lot of guys listing his name.
Peters would be lower on the list for me than Leishman, but it appears that Leishman's already spoken for. So who else would theoretically be in the conversation with Peters?
Furyk. You got a Furyk situation here?
Like a Brandon Grace?
Pretty big ballpark for Jim at this stage of his career.
Like a Westwood situation? You got to,
maybe time seems like the window's closed there for Lee. I like him a lot as a guy, but I mean,
Tommy Fleetwood?
Who do you
great hair. Incredible hair.
See, you and I noticed these things. I went to the Celtics Magic game the other night with my kids. All right, Susan and I took the two oldest to the Celtics Magic game, and to see the lid of Elfrid Payton, I couldn't.
Weekend, we call him.
I could not, Scott. I honestly, I couldn't watch anything else. I couldn't. No. It was captivating. I just couldn't imagine. I looked at my oldest son, who, we've got a great relationship, I think. I said, how long do you think it would take me to grow that? And Xander looks back at me, goes, one day in the grave. That's what he said to me. That's what he said to me.
So your son basically, he killed you, metaphorically and literally.
He slayed me. But I'm the same way. Who would you take the complete flyer on? Who would you take the absolute complete flyer on for this week?
That's always the $1 million question. Who's the guy that's just all the way off the grid?
Yeah.
And to me, it would be somebody, I don't know. And this is nostalgic Van Pelt talk. And I'd say Ernie, just because I love him so much, and he's wanted to win here, and he had it ripped from his grasp so often. And this is his last stroll around. And I saw him yesterday having lunch, and I said, "Hey, brother, why don't you play well enough that you get to come back forever?" And he just smiled and he said, "That's the plan, brother." I don't know if he's capable. That's totally an emotional pick. But you asked me to take a flyer, and I basically just filled out your pool for you, so I'm allowed to vote for my friend.
Now, Scott, I mean, I'm not having you fill out a pool here. I don't know where you would get that sense.
A little bit.
No.
A little bit.
Scott Van Pelt calling in from Augusta. A few more minutes left with him here. So, let me ask you. You mentioned lunch. If we had to ask you to fill out, if you were the champion and you had a champion's dinner, we kind of just discussed what Danny Willett had served. What would the Scott Van Pelt menu be? Because we're going to fill out our own menus here later on in the show.
Maryland crab cakes. And when I say Maryland crab cake, what that means is not that horrible flat hockey puck thing that has peppers in it that you've been served somewhere and told it was a Maryland crab cake, which it is not. A Maryland crab cake should be about the size of a tennis ball, and it should be lump back fin meat held barely held together with just the slightest bit of egg wash and breadcrumb. We would have those. We would have some hand-cut potatoes with a bit of Old Bay on them. We'd go full Maryland, and then we'd naturally we would wash that down with some Natty Boh, National Bohemian beers. I'd give them the full Maryland treatment.
So you would bring your own Wawa to the spot? Is that what you're saying? With the Utz chips, you can do that?
No, we're not ordering sandwiches off an iPad. We're gonna have crab cakes, and we're gonna have hand cut boardwalk fries and some Natty Boh. That's what we would do.
Is there anybody talking about what happened with Lexi Thompson over there?
Everybody. Everybody's been asked. Everyone thinks it's garbage what they did. Everyone thinks that if you want to assess a two-stroke penalty for a rules violation, okay, with a shrug. But you said that you're saying she signed a scorecard that was wrong, that you didn't tell her was wrong, and you did it a day and a half after the fact. You can't do that. It's you want to penalize her two strokes, penalize her two, but you can't possibly make it four, and you can't do it when they did it. And I think, Rich, that in an odd, maybe not an odd way, maybe an obvious way, I think she benefits more from losing the way she did than she would have had she won, because not as many people would know Lexi Thompson's name if she won an event that wouldn't have gotten nearly as much attention if this didn't happen. And the way she handled it with such grace and class earns her this legion of fans, and she's good enough that she'll win it again. So, yeah, it's a huge topic of conversation.
So what is the, I guess, rule here of using somebody's email or phone call advice? I mean,
that happens all the time.
But what's the statute of limitations on when you can actually apply it? And what is the rule there at Augusta National? Can we see something like that this weekend?
Sure. That's the question. Is what statute of limitations, Rich, is the most important question, because we're doing this a day after the fact. It happens all the time, every week on a PGA Tour event. Somebody will call in and say, "I think so and so did this," and they'll look with the rules committee. It's happened here in the past where they'll go in afterwards before the card is signed, and they'll say, "Well, we want to ask you about what happened on 11. What do you feel like this happened? Because we're not sure." And if the player says, "I'm good with it," then that's what they do. If you'll recall with Tiger a few years ago when he hit the flag on 15, and there was concern about an improper drop.
Yes,
it was put. Tiger and Augusta National were put in this odd place where they had to figure out after the fact, what do we do? Because technically Tiger signed an incorrect card. They went back after the fact and said, well, this penalty should have been imposed. And that's the danger here, is at what point do you just live with the error that you've made? And certainly a day after the fact, in the middle of the next round, to try to administer. We saw it last year at Oakmont with Dustin Johnson, where they said, hey, well, in the middle of the round, and maybe we'll talk about it when it's over. And I'm like, are you joking? That's when your wife says to you, hey, I got to talk to you. Oh, what do you want to talk about? We'll talk about it after dinner. Well, how much are you eating? How many more bites are you eating
Exactly.
at dinner? No more. I can't eat. Let's talk about it. And you drop your fork and say, what is it? Tell me now. And so it's really a ticklish area with golf that only happens in golf, and people don't like it. But for now, they're governing the sport that way. Somebody on their couch that goes, I think that's a bad drop. So they send an email or they call, and then, it's patently unfair, because the person who's not playing on television could be theoretically chucking their ball down the fairway.
No question. You're absolutely right. Hey, look, man, enjoy your time there as always. What a beautiful spot. I've never been. Heard only the greatest things about it. I don't know if I'm allowed to go there, Scott, because I don't know if you remember when I did on Sportscenter many years ago, Masters polling moments, when the Masters were in that argument about letting women in or not, and we kind of had
a green jacket in the fireplace, was there not?
Yeah, I used Berman's green jacket, went home and got the Steinbrenner white Dickie, busted that out.
As you do.
Pito,
as you do.
Bill Pito did the voiceover of Masters polling moments, and I had the fireplace behind me. Some in management at the Worldwide Leader weren't too fond of it.
Understood.
So if you hear,
Time's passed, Rich. Time's passed.
Okay.
A lot of things have happened. We'll see what we can do. I'm down there in the Butler cabin. I'll let them know you asked for me to steal something for you, and we'll see if we can't get you.
Oh my gosh, I did do that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Scott. Enjoy it. I love watching you.
Hey,
I look forward to it.
And congrats on the Emmy nomination.
Thanks.
I'm proud of you. You keep doing your thing, brother.
Thanks, bud. You too. That's Scott Van Pelt.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.